All right, we're gonna go through these matchups. I am recording this at 5:04 p.m. on Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. First day of school for me is tomorrow, so I'm gonna try to get this in. I don't want to make it short and sweet because I know some of you get really ticked off if I do it like that, but it is week one. We've finally made it. We had a trade go down. I'll address in a little bit. I didn't think it was so terrible, but both managers reworded something out, and I think it was totally fine after that. Um, uh, this is going to be an interesting season. Um, my thoughts going into the week and how the season is going to progress is it's going to be, I think, another game of survival, boys. When I look at how a lot of the teams are constructed, when I did my draft recap, or teams that I liked, teams versus I liked, hated, vice versa, and whatnot, I think it was split into thirds. I think a third of the league went RB heavy. I think another third of the league just said, "Hey, I'm not going to strategy. Just give me the value here." And then you have teams that went hero RB or zero RB based on where they were drafting and had to adjust to what the draft was indeed giving them, per se. It's going to be interesting because then if you do that, there's probably, if you mathematically do it, two of those teams would probably, I don't know. I'm trying to cut it in half, right? So if you have like four teams that did this, four teams that did that, and another four that did something else, you would have to imagine that the safest route is that half of those similarly constructed teams do wind up making it. My other quick thought is this. With us adding an extra roster spot, now I really didn't think about this that much in depth before, but it allows a little bit more flexibility to either stash a random running back that might be cut in 2 days, or it could wind up climbing up the roster depth chart, or hoarding more defenses. I think that's the only way that that spot was kind of used for. It's rare that a third string receiver would get stashed on that thing. The other thing that I'm thinking about there is looking at what just happened with the trade that literally just happened. One thing that I look at is that this has always been the case, but it is even more evident that before the season even started, a timeshare running back who is not the starter on his team wound up getting moved already because of the scarcity of the running back position. Mesh's backups, one is on IR and the other one is out for the year. And if you look at what's in there, people now know exactly. And I will flat out say this right now. This goes out to everybody in here. We have not had a back-to-back champion, I think, ever in this league. Somebody might correct me on that. I don't. Did Coffey go back to back? No, Morris. He almost did though, because he was 3 years in a row in the Super Bowl. But the Morris title reign, I think, was the roadblock. We have never had a back-to-back champion, and since COVID, there's been a new champion. I can flat out say without a shadow of a doubt that this is probably, in my personal opinion, the most competitive league maybe of all time. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because people know what's valuable versus what's shit. Okay? Like, and I can fully say that when we get into those middle rounds and those late rounds past round 10, it was, you kind of knew exactly who I'm targeting this guy, but people know where the smart reaches are. People know when they have to quote unquote go through a trend versus letting a trend slide. And the one thing that makes this league even more difficult is because nobody uses their fab, number one, because everybody wants the new running back that is going to get us started due to injury. Nobody spends it on receivers. Very rare does a lot of money go for a tight end, a quarterback, or a defense. They get spent on, but it's never like double-digit amount of money. It's just very intriguing and interesting because I will tell you right now that I don't think that any particular team is total dog poo or shit. and it was really hard for me to rank. As of right now, I think I might have moved up 2 people in my rankings and bumped down 2 others since that move. Because my head one day loves the team, the next day I hate it. So, boys, let's get into it. For the first time ever in fantasy football, these two gentlemen meet each other on the face of the battlefield. It is Rob Messia as a competitor, not a Make-A-Wish Foundation kid, taking on David Krier, former bowling mates. Something that's really funny, and you're going to see it right off on the quarterback situation, is that it is a head-to-head quarterback matchup where 2 quarterbacks face off each other. Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. I personally, and I think it's not even a hot take, but a lot of people are piling on Baltimore because they feel like they're going to get up for this game. All right, maybe. And then Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. I do think that if there is one guy, and especially in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, Mahomes definitely has the number 1 quarterback outcome. I love the addition of Xavier Worthy. Hollywood Brown, if he's healthy, is good. Rashee Rice underneath. As long as they can have burners that can stretch the field and catch the ball like they do this year, Rashee Rice is you're gonna give Mahomes a lot of time to freely do what he wants to do, and I think that's a recipe for success. And with that being said, no knock against Lamar Jackson, but I gotta go Mahomes. I don't care if the Ravens do win. I'm still gonna go Mahomes over Lamar. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who went off against the Rams in the playoffs. Brandon Ayuk, who is going to suit up, taking on Davante Adams and Devonta Smith. I am giving this to a clear-cut advantage of Mesh. Number 1, I really, really don't know what to expect from Davante Adams. This is one of the games, though, where it is a winnable situation. It is against the Chargers. Gardner Minshew starting makes me feel a little bit better about him. If it was O'Connell, you should have traded this guy immediately. Davante Adams, if you think the Raiders are going to be good, keep them. If you think they're going to be crappy, you should just sell them because I think this could end really bad. He just makes me very, very nervous. Devonta Smith in Brazil against the Green Bay Packers. I've always been an A.J. Brown guy. I've never been a Devonta Smith guy. David Sutton will tell you as the resident Eagle fan that when Goddard is available, Devonta Smith becomes more of a boom or bust play. Ayuk just suited up. St. Brown is going to be in the slot. The only guy I feel 100% confident in is St. Brown, and that's the reason why I'm going with Mesh. Josh Jacobs, who might be your best player this year, Mesh, and that's not a knock. I just think that he's really, really good. And Tony Pollard taking on Jonathan Taylor and James Cook. This is closer than a lot of people think because I know that Jonathan Taylor's got the number 1 draft capital, but in a matchup against Houston versus Josh Jacobs' matchup against Philly, how does Philly's run defense look without Fletcher Cox? But the minute Josh Jacobs, I think, was priced misappropriately. I know a lot of people didn't like him because of the 3.5 yards per carry in Vegas, but that's with Aiden O'Connell. He now goes to an offense. Bottom line is this. If you loved prime Aaron Jones on the Green Bay offense, Josh Jacobs at worst is probably 80% of that. And the fact that Marshawn Lloyd is dinged up, Emmanuel Wilson is dinged up, and A.J. Dillon is out for the year, this guy is going to get fed. He has proven that he can handle a workload, a lot of it. We don't know how much and how long that can last. Tony Pollard against the Bears. The Bears have a hype defense. Pollard, in my opinion, is going to get the bulk of the carries. I think a lot of people think it's going to be a split. I completely disagree. I think Messi made the right call here with going with this Titans back. The only way I think Spears gets involved is 2-minute drill and 3rd down. Taylor against Houston. The reason why you like it, not because of talent, but with Anthony Richardson, they slow down the pace of play. And if Houston doesn't come out scorching hot, Taylor could be a cheat code. The reason why, if you're off on Taylor like I was, it was because we don't know what his touchdown upside is with Richardson, but any given week, he's a coin flip touchdown guy. And who is this? James Cook. He could be this year's Rachaad White. He might not be good in real life, but all that volume that he gets could wind up helping him. I am going to give the edge to David Krier, and the reason being is James Cook is in a shootout potential of a game. I don't know what the hell that Chicago Tennessee game is going to look like. Goddard versus Kittle. I'm going to go Kittle. I think that they've prepared enough plays and packages for him if Ayuk wasn't coming back. So I'm going to go with that. Now, Brian Thomas and a flex to be named. It's most likely going to be Deontay Johnson. Keenan Allen and Ezekiel Elliott. Krier, the only reason why I was totally off of your team is because of your flexes. Because I actually do think, and I'll say it because people don't like it when I do this, Krier, and I know you probably are tuning me out anyway, but a lot of people don't like it when I say, who you should start is player this over player that. But I'm looking at your bench right now, and there is one guy in particular I would clearly have over definitely Elliott. Maybe not Keenan Allen, wait and see. If he's out on the field, see what happens. If he's looking like crap, then you bench him. But there is a guy that I absolutely love that I actually think might be your Jacoby Myers of this year on your bench. He might be a little bit better. So I don't know if you felt like that was a knock. But Keenan Allen and Ezekiel Elliott, fuck Ezekiel Elliott. Keenan Allen, do I give this guy the benefit of the doubt? I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when he actually looks really, really good. I think because of his age, they didn't use him a lot in the preseason, just because they're careful with his injury history. And then you have Brian Thomas in a game where the game can shoot out. My only concern is, out of all the Jaguars receivers come season end, I think he is going to be the best one. I just don't know if it's going to happen right away. If it does, dude, congratulations on the pick, because that was my favorite pick that you made, aside from Josh Jacobs. But we'll have to see how the receiving core divvies up. Christian Kirk, who you did get rid of, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's not playing in 2 wide receiver sets. That's always been the case with him whenever he was in Jacksonville. So let's pump the brakes on that. Gabe Davis, though, I don't know if they're treating him like a true number 1 wide receiver. I don't think he has the ability to do that, but they want him to run more short and intermediate routes, which by default would make Brian Thomas the big play guy. So he, I think, is a boomer bust option, but a very good one indeed. And Deontay Johnson against the Saints, look, follow the targets, my man. Follow the targets, because if he plays, okay, this guy is always going to be a low-end wide receiver too. Whenever he was in Pittsburgh with bad quarterback play, he was literally 10 points without touchdowns. If the touchdown total does go up, you're getting a guy who has a floor of 10 points that has the potential to have some 17-point weeks if he gets a touchdown. And I think the same case is going to be with Bryce Young. I think he actually fits well with what Bryce Young does. And again, this was one part of your piece mesh where I think a lot of people were a little bit so on, just because he might be very, very good. He might be startable, but the injury history does make him look like poop. And then you got the Ravens D. Ravens have a good defense. Mahomes should look fine. San Fran against the Jets. Now, you know how I feel about my Jets. But I do think if I had to do a strong lean, San Fran is at home where Baltimore has to travel on the road. And Mahomes doesn't really force turn. I think the worst game he played was the flu game against Denver. And then Denver thought that they could make a run. And obviously that did not happen. All right, well, let's calm down and pick a winner. And when I look at both of these teams, man, it's really close. But I'm gonna go Krier, and because I think when Mesh has his flex and it's gonna be 103 to 113, I think where Krier has a distinct advantage is quarterback. Oh, that's not distinct, but the running back department, I think, will really running back and tight end, I think, are the clear advantage. That I'd be shocked if Mesh overtook him in that department. Everything else with Mesh, I do think that even though Amon-Ra St. Brown is good, Devontae Adams for this week might be okay. The biggest wild card, though, is if Mesh was to win, the X factor here is Brian Thomas. Because if he starts, David, I'm sorry, because I did give you a little bit of help. I didn't name you the obvious guy. But when I look at Mesh's last flex, if my guess is it's either between Deontay Johnson or Jaylen Warren. Krier's weakest point is the flex area. And if Mesh has a Brian Thomas touchdown. I think that can make things interesting, but it is too early in the season for me to make that judgment call, so I'm going to go Krier. This is amazing because this is now another game where both quarterbacks are going head to head. This is the second one in a row that I've done. It's Rob Coffey versus Vintage Harsh. Elephant in the room, Jamar Chase. My guess is that he's going to play, and I know how Harsh would set up his lineup, Coffey. So, and I know you wouldn't be surprised about who I would say is getting put in there. I'm about to do a little bit of a heel turn here, and Harsh, you might not like this. Just kidding. I'm pushing back, but I think, in my personal opinion, with the move that Paul just made for the start of the season, I think it puts him in the driver's seat to be one of the top 6 teams. Maybe it's a big maybe, because we know the issue with Paul teams. It's either, wow, this looks really good on paper, or yet again he gets value trapped. Cup of Coffee taking on Love, chasing the Chubbies. And speaking of Love, Jordan Love taking on Jalen Hurts on Friday, and in this fantasy matchup, love to see head-to-head matchups. I don't think Brazil is going to stop any of these boys. Jalen Hurts with Kellen Moore. You are now getting, think of it this way. If you're a Jalen Hurts believer, you are now getting what we've seen the last 3 years was his floor as a starting quarterback, and now we have his baked-in floor with some pass game upside in Kellen Moore. Creativity that should work wonders with this kid. Now, does that mean his floor is going to go to 30 plus a week? No, but I do think that he's going to have a lot of those games. Jordan Love is a guy I find really interesting because I didn't have him in my top 10 quarterback list. I think because it was a tale of two halves. First half, it was what the fuck. Like, everybody thought Green Bay should have moved off of this guy. Second half, he was unstoppable. I think he showed a lot of poise and showed that he is a starting quarterback in this league for sure. But I do think the way Green Bay wants to run their offense is through efficiency, not a quarterback that drops back a million times. It'll throw 300 yards every game. Like in that Tua mode, I don't think he's there. He's a guy, though, that I think will throw for 250 and 2, I think is like his floor. And I think he's more of a floor play than an upside play, so I'm going to go Hurts. Cooper Kupp and Rashee Rice versus Malik Neighbors and Drake London. I'm going to put Chase in the flex spot. So, you know what? No. We'll take out Neighbors, put him in the flex, put Chase in there. Chase against New England looks good. Drake London against Pittsburgh. It's how do we feel about Joey Porter Jr., fellas? Because I think last year he had a tremendous season, and then it tailed off a little bit towards December, I think. He wasn't that locked down. Don't give me the Stephon Diggs Bills game in the playoffs bullshit either. Chase against New England will be fine if he suits up. Cooper Kupp against Detroit. Right now, this is the only healthy receiver, I think, that Stafford's got that he likes to throw to. Rashee Rice against Baltimore. So here's the thing. My bold take on the Coffee side of the receivers for week 1, because I don't know how it's going to be long term, but Kupp and Rashee Rice will combine for over 20 plus catches. You can mark that. You can quote that. I think they are tremendous floor plays. Rashee Rice will have a week 1 to remember. Because I do think that Baltimore does win this game, but I do think that Rashee Rice's stat line is going to be, I'm going to say it right now, 10 catches, 108 yards, no touchdown though. And Cooper Kupp, will he turn back the clock? For this week, I am going to say yes. I am going to say 10. We'll give him 11, one more. 11 catches, 125, and 1. Now we're going back to Drake London and Jamar Chase. Chase, will he score a touchdown? Yes. Drake London, Harsh, I'm going to be honest. I need to see what he actually looks like, buddy. This is a guy that I get the hype and I get the upside that he is playing with Kirk Cousins now. But I've got to see it, because to me he's still a wide receiver 2, just priced in the wide receiver 1 range. I'm going Coffee. Running backs, I'm clearly going Coffee here. Harsh, we'll just talk about yours for a second. There's no way in hell these guys are going to outproduce Breece Hall and Devon Achane. If there was one to have a good game, it's Zamir White. Javonte Williams is not in a bad matchup. but I think Zamir White has more of a chance to score a touchdown. Now, let's hypothetically speaking, let's say you go toe to toe with his receivers and then your running backs do get a touchdown, then I think we're competing here. But then you lose me with Greg Dulcich versus Kyle Pitts. The other interesting thing about this matchup is if Drake London struggles, I would imagine Pitts has a good game. There is another sleeper on this team for this week, though. JSN and Chase Brown. This is where I'm very confident. I won't say confidently. Let's say it's Tank Dell and Malik Neighbors. Dell. I think here's what you're gonna have to view Tank Dell as. I like Tank Dell a lot, and I think the fantasy community loves him because he's undersized and he's like 165 pounds. The Texans, I think, are going to be very careful with this guy. They love him, yes, but they're going to use him sparingly. The games where Tank Dell, quote unquote, went off and had multiple catches and went off, was because that Nico Collins was hurt. Noah Brown was hurt in a few games, and they had to rely on him. I don't think they want to give him that workload. Yes, we would love to see that happen, but he is the one guy that, yes, I think he's got a tremendous amount of upside, and I don't think he's going to be a bust. But I don't think he's going to be the clear-cut target leader on this team, excuse me. Malik Neighbors will have a great game, Coffey, though. That's what you got to look out for. I'm definitely going to go harsh. Tank Dell will score a touchdown because I think this is the game where C.J. Stroud comes out and people are going to be amazed yet again. JSN, Coffey, I don't have any faith in Chase Brown yet, but JSN, I would imagine that Pat Surtain will be on DK Metcalf. He didn't do anything against him last time. Las Vegas versus Los Angeles. Is this a head-to-head matchup? Last time these two faced off, it didn't look good. I don't. This is a wash, dude. I hate both of these defenses. Harsh, the X factor for you to take down Coffey in this matchup is you need both your running backs, unfortunately, to get touchdowns. It's not a hard task, though. And the Coffey thing, how do we feel about that? I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm gonna go Coffey, and I just think that this team starts off very, very strong. I don't think Harsh has bad matchups per se. It's just a tall task at order because Harsh, let's face the facts. You know for a fact Devon Achane is going to rip up that Jacksonville Jaguar defense, and Breece Hall will get his floor at least a 15. So it's too much for me to say. Harsh, for you to kind of go off against Coffey, man, you need a lot to happen, but it is possible. It is possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the third, I repeat, this is the third matchup in a row that has head-to-head quarterbacks facing each other in real life and in fantasy. It is the Texas Rattlesnake taking on the champion Kincaid's Treatment. You talk about two teams that are very, very, very different as far as roster construction is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the task at hand, the matchup. Texas Rattlesnake, myself, versus Alan Williams, Kincaid Treatment. Anthony Richardson taking on C.J. Stroud. The worst case in real life and fantasy for my end is if the Colts control the game on the ground and the Houston Texans defense does not have an answer for it, means that you're limiting C.J. Stroud's opportunities, which would also kill my receivers. And Anthony Richardson has like 2 rushing touchdowns, but that's all he needs to do. That is always in play in this head-to-head matchup, but it's Stroud versus Richardson. It'll be interesting to see how this matchup winds up going down, but I absolutely love both of these quarterbacks in that matchup. Bottom line with Anthony Richardson is you're going to get a lot of bad, ugly plays, but he's going to make it up for his rushing attack on the ground. And by all means, C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson, I am going to go with a draw because I do think that they both have 20 to 30 point upside. Both should be in great matchups, by the way. So that is something to look forward to. We're good, gentlemen? Okay. Receivers Olave and Nico Collins versus Addison and McMillan. Before I just say, okay, we already know who wins, let's just kind of break this down for a little bit because it is my matchup and I do want to give the champ his due. Chris Olave this is make or break for him this year. He is going to get the volume, but how good of the volume is it remains to be a good question mark. He's at home. I would imagine J.C. Horn would travel most of the game, but if Clint Kubiak is saying we're moving him all over, we're going to get him stuffs behind the line of scrimmage rather than just him running screens and go routes. Nico Collins, I love. I mean, the Colts last time he saw Nico Collins had a career game. Jordan Addison is shaky. I think it'll be the Jefferson show, but we never know. And Jalen McMillan. Bottom line is, Alan, your receivers every week are literally going to be like a 33% chance if they're going to score a touchdown or not. So I really can't go off of anything right now. Bijan and Jerome Ford getting the start versus Kenneth Walker and Rashad White. Kenneth Walker is by far one of my favorite running backs for the season, and I love him in this matchup. This guy is going to scare the crap out of me in week 1 because I love Kenneth Walker. I have him only in one fantasy league, which I am very upset about, but you can guarantee in DFS I'm playing the shit out of him. Bijan, is he going to get that workload? He should. Jerome Ford against Dallas is a sneaky play, and I do think that Rashad White and Jerome Ford might have similar stat lines as far as fantasy points are concerned. So because of me saying that, I'm actually going to go a clear-cut draw here. I just think that the matchup for Kenneth Walker is so tasty that he can finish as a top 5 running back this week, and that's not even crazy for me to say that. Speaking of head-to-head draw matchups, Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid. Give me a fucking draw again because I love McBride in a shootout. Kincaid I love in a shootout. The only thing that makes me very nervous more why I went McBride over Kincaid. Now, this is something that Allen is going to write down mentally, and he's going to say, well, I knew you were worried about that, and he's going to shove it in my face. If there was any concern about Dalton Kincaid, it would be Dawson Knox red zone touchdowns, and that's the same thing for Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer red zone touchdowns. That could still be a thing. Highly doubt that it will be. But, that's why I'm saying draw right now. Stephon Diggs and Terry McLaurin taking on Travis Etienne and Jahmyr Gibbs. So right now we have the flex department. What is Diggs like in Houston? He was just named the team captain. I actually do think there's going to be some bias here, obviously, because he is my player. But as far as old, dusty veterans that could still be relevant for fantasy, I liked the Diggs pick a lot. There's a chance that he could wind up, and in fact, I actually do think that he winds up with the most targets on this team. And I do think that he's going to now transition into a Larry Fitzgerald correlation where, like I said, Larry Fitzgerald played well into his mid to late 30s because he was willing to move around in the slot. And I think that's what Diggs is going to do for the rest of his career in Houston. You are now giving alpha receivers who can't separate on the outside anymore very well because if you just watch Jarius Sneed make him his bitch last year twice. That's what happened. Now and I told Johnny about this. I said, if Houston realizes that this guy's a slot receiver now, he's going to be a great pick. And I think that's what it is. I'm very high on Stephon Diggs. I am telling you right now that I think he's going to have a great week 1. Terry McLaurin also has a mouth-watering matchup. But if we're talking about the matchup game, Jahmyr Gibbs off the injury report. Travis Etienne off the injury report. Etienne I don't like long-term, but this is a matchup where he can eat and Jahmyr Gibbs can eat as well. Allen, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving you draft capital incentive, but I do firmly believe Diggs is going to have a great game. And McLaurin, I think – so here's the thing with McLaurin. A lot of people think he's Jaden Daniels, wide receiver 1. I can't – I'm going to pump the brakes on that. I do think, though, that he's going to be a very good – he's going to be a good enough wide receiver 2, though. Chicago versus Minnesota, I mean, look. Both matchups against turnover-prone quarterbacks. Time to pick a winner. if we're going back to everything that we said, the way Allen wins, if the Colts control the ground game and Anthony Richardson is loving life, give me Allen Williams because I have 3 other Texans. But if it becomes a shootout, that's the worst case for Allen in this matchup because you would have to imagine that one of those touchdowns is going to go to one of my guys. There is a 50% chance that I'm going to be on the receiving end of that touchdown. But I think where the matchup is won, I think, is the receiver department. Because I do think that the flex matchups are pretty much even, but I'll give him a slight advantage. And that's where I think it's going to hurt Allen early on in the season. But it is going to be a good matchup. Holy moly, boys. I didn't even look at this from the start of the show. I thought it was just my matchup. Let me repeat that. We officially have 2 quarterbacks going 1-on-1 again for the 4th straight time in a row. Brock Purdy and Aaron Rodgers taking on it. Obviously talking about Andre and Patrick. Man, I'm sorry. I got like a hole in my stomach. Someone must have ate. I don't know. Man, I'm sorry. I'm in pain. You know who's not in pain, though? Andre's team, because I don't see a questionable tag on there. All right. Here we go, boys. Brock Purdy versus the Jets or Aaron Rodgers versus San Francisco 49ers. This is a low projected total, and I don't like either of these guys in this matchup. I think that both are not going to. You know what? No, I'm gonna put a stake to my claim right now. Rodgers will outscore Purdy. Tyreek Hill and Jaden Reed. So we have the classic Allen Williams build versus Deebo Samuel and Garrett Wilson. Ooh, is this closer than we think? No. Tyreek Hill alone against Jacksonville will win this matchup single-handedly. I like Garrett Wilson long-term. Bold take. People will say he's the next guy to finish as the wide receiver 1 of the season. As a Jets fan, I would love that. Deebo Samuel, I'm gonna break it down for you. I think Deebo Samuel is great as a wide receiver 2. He is not great as a wide receiver 1. Jaden Reed against Philly. He's the safest guy out of the bunch, I guess. Safe, I'm using that term a little bit loosely, but Tyreek Hill against Jacksonville just scares the crap out of me. If there's one guy who's going to put 30, it's Tyreek Hill. This should have been the number 1 pick of the draft. Isaiah Pacheco and Derrick Henry versus Najee Harris and David Montgomery. Now, with the disgusting build as that seems, I actually like both of these guys for the build that Patrick does have. But Pacheco versus Henry, there are some people out there that think that Derrick Henry will turn back the clock, and what do you know? The king is back for this week. And then you have Pacheco, who people are now panicking about. No panic needed here, boy. Najee Harris, David Montgomery, both are in good matchups, but I'm going with Andre. Jake Ferguson versus Brock Bowers. Give me Jake Ferguson in that one. Aaron Jones. Okay. Let's talk about Aaron Jones for a second, because the projections from Andre, I could have sworn, have dipped by like 3 points, because I remember he was at 115 and he's now down to 112. The report just came out that Ty Chandler is going to go on kick return duties. So with running backs going on return yardage, ouch. How do I put this about my man Aaron Jones? Aaron Jones. I think we have to treat him like he's always been in Green Bay. I think he's going to touch the ball 15 times minimum, but he's going to get capped out at 20. And I do think that Ty Chandler is going to get ramped up as the season goes on. But he is still the lead back and a good matchup. I actually like Aaron Jones this week, Andre. Chris Godwin, I don't know why. Look, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself because I know that Godwin actually didn't have a shitty year, but like he didn't do anything in the Canales offense. Now Liam Cohen comes in and everybody wants to be back in on this guy. Chris Godwin, though, I think is look, I could be wrong and I'll eat the crow. But like to me, I don't see what is the big difference between Chris Godwin and Jacoby Myers. I don't know. One is drafted 3-4 rounds ahead of the other, and I'm not a Chris Godwin guy. Puka and Michael Pittman Jr. Is Puka a one-year wonder? Probably not, but he is questionable already. And Michael Pittman Jr., he's a guy nobody wanted this year. He was kind of nobody wanted him last year, but he outproduced his ADP. Now I don't know if he can outproduce that going here. But the matchup against Houston with Anthony Richardson, he might target him 10 times. He might catch 3 of those balls though. That's the issue you run with Michael Pittman Jr. And then you got Puka Nacua. Okay. Seattle D versus Tampa D. Give me Seattle D all the way against Bo Nix. That's why it's still low. Swift is not getting the start anymore. Okay. This was an interesting matchup, but I do think the projections do have it right. The way I'm going to break down the Andre team is I liked his start of the draft with Hill, Pacheco. I love Henry. I think will start off the season pretty good. But I think everything else is very, very, very flory. But I think with Tyreek Hill's outburst performance yet again in week 1, I do think that it's enough to get him by Patrick in this one. So the trend actually ends right here. I just did 4 games in a row. Now, if I did the other matchup, it would have been 5 games in a row. But this is the only matchup where the 2 quarterbacks do not face each other in real life head-to-head. Because Dak Prescott plays the other team in Ohio. Not the Bengals, but the Browns. Taking on Joe Burrow. This is Paul versus Alex. Paul's team gets a significant upgrade. Significant being the big word. Christian Kirk for now might be okay. There's a lot of people, believe it or not, Paul, the trade that was just made, I'm just going to give you some feedback. There's a lot of people, and I'm not one of them, that actually think that Mesh won that deal. I am not one of them, but the revised deal, yeah, there's a lot of people that are team Mesh on that one. I for one am not. I think that Christian Kirk is still going to be a favorite target of Trevor Lawrence's for the time being. Now let's talk about the game. Dak versus Cleveland, Burrow versus New England. Well, if Jamar Chase is out there, fire up Joe Burrow, ladies and gentlemen. Who is the other Ellis? Oh, Justin Jefferson. Dak Prescott. Hello. This is an interesting matchup because I don't think that the running game is going to be good. Dak could again be underpriced in fantasy because if we connect the dots, right? Defense got a lot worse. Running game definitely got worse. And they unlocked CeeDee Lamb to his full potential. So if you add up all of those, Dak Prescott could have a great year. I think he will. And this matchup against Deshaun Watson, I think he looks pretty good. Speaking of CeeDee Lamb, you know what he's going to do. Score touchdowns. Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle, there's a good explanation on Jaden Waddle, and this might be a guy that a lot of us, myself included, will regret that we passed up on, and it's because of this. Somebody had broken it down like this. Okay. I'll get back to that in a minute. Sorry, we're back. I left off on Jalen Waddle, and Waddle is a great case of he can't bust because we know what his floor is, but his upside could be even greater. And I think the podcast I was listening to was it's like him and Malik Neighbors. And that's what I think Malik Neighbors might be. I mean, you've seen it all over everywhere that he might be rookie year Jalen Waddle. Just have a shit ton of catches that probably don't result into a lot of touchdowns, but productive nonetheless. Waddle is playing in such a offensive friendly environment, but that was his worst year. And dude, he had over 1,007. He could be again another guy because I loved him coming out of Alabama a lot, and I still think that he's a wide receiver 1. It's just Tyreek Hill limits the upside, but in this game, Waddle could go off. Kyron and Ramondre Stevenson taking on Barkley and James Conner. I love the Paul side by a mile. Not even close. Paul, I think. Oh, I didn't even do receivers. Dude, holy crap. I'm sorry. Justin Jefferson and DJ Moore. DJ Moore against Tennessee. Is L'Jarius Sneed for real? We'll see. Jefferson will go off, but I'm going the Alex side. Sorry about that, Paul. I know how much you love to tune into these. Barkley and Connor, it's not even close. As much as I like Kyron Williams, I do think that Barkley Barkley on the Eagles, I mean, it's pretty much every Giants fan knows what Barkley is, and he can be so much better with an offensive line. So take it for what it's worth. Connor, dude, honestly, this is the guy. If there are two guys I think that are not RB1s that will finish as RB1s this week, my first money prediction would be on Kenneth Walker, and my number two, James Conner, without a fucking doubt, dude. Connor's going to go off. Ask Johnny about what the Bills are like without Matt Milano. Connor, okay, maybe not go off, but can he get 70 total yards and a touchdown? Absolutely. And I don't like Ramondre Stevenson at all. So give me the Paul side, hands down. This is an interesting one. Do I like Laporta or Kelsey? Paul, Kelsey's getting up there in age, buddy. So you took him at a very, 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 very great and good discounted value. So I'm not going to hate you on that, my man. But the one thing that I will say is he going to be limited? Because we don't know. We absolutely don't know. Kelsey went off in the playoffs, but do they limit him? But I'm going to be honest. The one guy I didn't like this year is Sam Laporta. Sorry, Paul. Now the jinx is going to happen. I'll go wash. George Pickens, Christian Watson, or Zay Flowers and Christian Kirk. Well, Zay Flowers really looked very good up until the fumble against the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's start with Zay Flowers and any Baltimore pass catching option. I do not know how consistent they can be without Lamar Jackson. I think we saw it one year, and I think it was Bateman's rookie year, that Hollywood Brown was looking really good, and Bateman in the second half looked very, very good. But other than that, man, it's just these guys have not really hit their upside. And Flowers could be that guy. I think it's because he plays with Lamar Jackson. And, dude, I am still a Rashad Bateman truther. I mean, Matika could tell you that. But it is against the Chiefs. I do think that there is some redemption here for Zay Flowers because if there's one guy I think that's been training his ass off for this game, it's Zay Flowers. And I would even probably, you know what, Paul? For you, and I'll screenshot it, I will bet Zay Flowers touchdown in that game just for you, buddy. Christian Kirk, newly acquired against the Miami Dolphins. Well, this is a game where there's going to be a lot of shootout potential. This is one thing that I've always stated in the past for guys who play the slot. If there is a shootout game or a team that gets blown out, like the Jaguars could easily get blown out in this game, the guys that always rack up the garbage time is Christian Kirk. And you saw that when he was the number one target on that team 2 years ago. I think the same could be said right here, guys. They just dump off to the slot and the running backs out of the backfield because it's easy. They're like, fuck it, we just need some yardage, dink and dunk, dink and dunk. Kirk is still going to be the primary slot guy. Trevor Lawrence, say what you want about Brian Thomas. Say what you want about Gabe Davis. Ingram and Kirk have the established rapport long term with him. I do think, and that's why I'm actually so it's funny because a lot of people hate Kirk. I think, I'll be honest, Paul, I do think that Brian Thomas will eventually be the best receiver come season end. But I do think with him in the slot in this game, it could be really good. Because Flowers and Kirk to me are like floor plays. It's like, are they just guys who get you 8 to 10 a week, or can they get some sprinkling upside? And I think that both of the matchups bode well for you in this one, Paul, a lot, where I do think that they both hit their upside. George Pickens and Christian Watson. Well, okay, being the George Pickens stan of the league, I passed up on him just because of where I was picking. I think that Pickens should be he should have been taken where Zay Flowers was taken. Look, Arthur Smith PTSD is a real thing. I suffer from it, and I don't expect him to unlock George Pickens wide receiver 1 season. I just think what George Pickens did last year is probably going to be the same thing. Will he hit over 1,000 yards? Yes. Is he a double-digit touchdown guy? That's what you're hoping for, so he takes that next step. The talent has always been there. He's a contested catch guy. He does not separate, but this is a very, very boring passing attack. And I actually do not, I repeat, I do not want anything to do with Pittsburgh Steelers passing attack guys. Just not for me, dog. Christian Watson. Did we mention? No, we're going to mention him right now, though. Christian Watson. I repeat, Christian Watson. He is against the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a really good game against Philadelphia 2 years ago. Look, he has not been on the injury report once. You gotta love that. You can't argue with that. And I think that if he's healthy, he is going to be the guy who has, say what you want about any of these Packers receivers. Wicks is the only wild card, but if a Packers receiver has a good game, he's the one who puts up the most points. So do we go with Boomer Bust on the Alex side or the Paul side? I am inclined to actually go Paul here. I think that the floor is good, but I do think that the matchups bode very, very well. Uh, yeah. Dallas against Cleveland. Sean Watson is turnover prone. Paul, this was an interesting pickup because you didn't even draft him, but I feel like you have a gay fixation for the Saints D. And you also have Pittsburgh on the bench. Um, how do I put Saints D into terms? They might actually be pretty good. Yet again, I just think that their offense is horrible. Um, yeah, this is a good play at home against the Carolina Panthers. I forgot that they have Chase Young now too. Like, there's a lot of pieces where you look up and you're like, oh, he's here. Yeah, yes, he is. Um, this is a high projected game. Paul, dude, this is classic Paul. He has projected the highest amount of points. Not just, I mean, he probably would have too, even if he didn't make that move. I don't even know who he would have put in the lineup, but dude, come here. I mean, I Paul, I like this team out of the gate. To be honest, I think your worst matchup, when you look at your team right now, you're gonna say your worst matchup is probably DJ Moore, and we don't even know if Snead's gonna cover him, not Keenan Allen or Rome. I don't know, but everything else, dude, bodes very, very well for you in this one. I think where you really have Alex beat is the running backs, and that's clearly based on matchup alone, because I do think that Connor could finish as an RB1, and so will Barkley. Without further ado, the matchup of the week, the highest total on the board, with two men living under the same roof and with two men who have two quarterbacks that are going head to head. Now, if I wanted to continue the trend, I would have put this as the fifth straight quarterback matchup, where it's funny if you look, guys, because literally five matchups have two quarterbacks going head to head. But I do, for a point total perspective, like this matchup as the matchup of the week based on projections. Let's see if it lives up to the hype. David Sutton, Johnny J. Fresh. Let's get into it. Kyler Murray taking on Josh Allen. Both quarterbacks head to head. Both quarterbacks with a lot of upside in this one. I will say the one knock on Kyler Murray, and because I do think that Murray will have a good year, I think that Murray will probably finish as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. The one concern with the Jonathan Gannon led regime rather than the Cliff Kingsbury regime with Kyler Murray. If you remember when it was 4th and 1 or at the goal line at the 1 yard line, Clayton Tune took those touchdowns and they took Kyler Murray out. I don't know if that's maybe because he came off of injury or if they were trying to conserve their franchise quarterback, not believing in him and saying, hey, listen, we don't need you getting hurt like this. It's like the Mahomes thing. Remember when Mahomes used to do that all the time and Andy Reid said, no, thank you, I won't do it again? That's the only thing, the only knock if you really want to knock Murray. But this is a matchup where he's going to have to run a lot. He's going to have to throw a lot. But I am not taking him over Josh Allen. Good news is that Buffalo's defense, whether or not Johnny wants to hear it or not, is a projected to be a really bad defense this year from the fantasy perspective. We'll have to see how Marvin Harrison Jr. looks. How does Trey McBride look? And who's the number two in this offense? There's a lot of questions, but even more so with the Buffalo side. I'm definitely taking Josh Allen, though. Like, the worst case for Josh Allen is that James Cook steals a lot of touchdowns, and that ain't happening. So I'll take Josh Allen's floor. A.J. Brown, Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Mike Evans and Amari Cooper. Well, okay. Mike Evans has probably out of all of these guys that are on the board right now, Mike Evans has the best matchup by far. It's Emmanuel Forbes, who's probably not even starting, which means that if he's not starting, the other guy is just as bad as he is. If Mike Evans can replicate what he did last year, this is a mouth-watering matchup. It should be all systems go for Mr. Evans in this one, so I do like his outcome here. Amari Cooper, revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys. I am pretty sure, knowing Amari Cooper and the type of playmaker that he is, he has this marked on his calendar. there's a lot of revenge game scenarios this week, and I think that this is one where Amari Cooper will get his revenge. I will book him for a touchdown. Mr. AJ Brown, we got to talk about you, my friend. Okay, so this guy definitely could finish. Garrett Wilson and him are the guys that are outside that elite tier that could probably finish as the wide receiver one. AJ Brown against Green Bay. Here's the interesting thing. Jair Alexander. There are games where this guy looks like he's horrible, and then there are games where he looks like the best corner in the league. Feast or famine with Jair Alexander. Does he get up for this game? I would think that he does, but here's the thing. AJ Brown is not one to get locked up or locked down. I think L'Jarius Sneed was the one guy who locked him down last year, but he locked down everybody down. And then the whole motion thing with Kellen Moore. I know a lot of people are reading reports thinking that it's Devonta Smith in the slot because with the Jahan Dotson signing, people are going to say, oh, Smitty's going to play the slot now. But last time I checked, their best receiver is A.J. Brown, not Devonta Smith. So I'm banking my money on him having a good game. And Marvin Harrison Jr., how does this guy look out right out of the gate? He's the biggest question mark in here because paying that round 2 capital, you are essentially saying to yourself, this guy is the best receiver on the team, which clearly he is, and that the prospect pedigree is warranted. All you kept hearing about the last 2 years was Marvin Harrison Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think because he didn't show up to the combine and didn't do anything and literally was just saying, hey, look, I'm just prepared for whatever comes my way type of thing. How is he going to look? I think he's going to look just fine because it is the Buffalo Bills defense. But we have to see the pecking order with Kyler Murray. Who does he prefer? We know that Trey McBride he has the most chemistry with. Greg Dortch, long term, if you want to go that route, absolutely. But you know, they took Marvin Harrison Jr. for a reason. I know you've heard it all along. His floor is AJ Green, which, if that's the case, you are getting a low end wide receiver one. I am calling this a wash, and the only reason why I'm doing this is, will Marvin Harrison Jr. have like a Randy Moss-esque rookie sensational debut? I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but he is a good receiver. AJ Brown is a great one too. Johnny's matchups, though, I love because what Cooper does is that he's a big play wide receiver still at this point in his career. And Dallas's defense is a gambling defense. He will definitely take one over the top. And I am confident that Evans scores. Marvin Harrison is the biggest question mark for me. Long term, absolutely love the kid, but we got to see what the pecking order is right away. Is he going to get 7 to 8 targets, or is he more in that 10 to 12 target range right off the gate in a shootout type of potential atmosphere? I think that Marvin Harrison, best atmosphere, but I think that Johnny's got the best matchups. AJ Brown's going to do AJ Brown things. So it is kind of a wash for me. I'm not leaning strongly here. I know that shocks David a little bit, but I'm just telling you how it is. Okay, one of the weaker running back rooms, and I think it's Harsh and David, I think, have the weakest. Alvin Kamara, Devin Singletary, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon. First and foremost, they are being very generous with Alvin Kamara's projections. If we think that it's a repeat, he is always going to be projected at 13 because it's dink and dunk Derek Carr. Fine, I will give you that, but I don't think there's any touchdown upside with Alvin Kamara. I think if anything, you're going to slowly see the projections go down. If you're telling me that this guy is going to turn back the clock and be Alvin Kamara of like 3, 4, 5 years ago, no thank you. This is a guy that was a stay away from me. He is essentially, I'm going to say it, dude. You're going to not like what I'm saying, but I had Rachaad White over Alvin Kamara. At least Rachaad White is going to get touchdowns. I can't say the same with Alvin Kamara, and they're both going to get catches, and they're both hit or miss running the ball. Obviously, Kamara a better runner, but the offensive line is not the best, so. Singletary, it's literally like, okay, this guy's going to get volume and he's not going to do anything with it. So that's why he's always going to be 8 to 10 protected every week. McCaffrey says that he's going to be okay against the Jets. If there is one way you want to beat the Jets, it's with the running back and slot receivers. That's the way to attack, even though Michael Carter, the second or the third, I think, I forget which one we have. Is it the Papa or the son? I don't know. But he's a good slot corner. But we're not talking about slot corners in this matchup. It's Christian McCaffrey. Joe Mixon. This is literally, I think what we're going to see is a repeat of last year. It's literally a washed running back who's going to get a crap ton of volume because the competition behind him, Dameon Pierce sucks, and Cam Akers might be better than Dameon Pierce, but he hasn't supplanted him yet. So with all that being said, as I just spewed all that knowledge on you right now, Mixon is in a very favorable matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. Last time Joe Mixon played the Indianapolis Colts, I'm pretty sure he either had 2 or 3 touchdowns. I do remember that game very, very much because I think I had Jake Browning starting in that one. I don't think that means much, but I am just going to throw it out there that if I'm saying that Alvin Kamara is a boring, boring pick, Joe Mixon is in the same tier. So then it comes down to Christian McCaffrey and Devil Singletary. Give me McCaffrey every day of the week. Right now, Johnny is sweeping the board in the matchup department. So right now, this projection isn't looking good. Can things change here? Mark Andrews versus Evan Ingram. I think this is hard for me to even get behind David on this one. And the reason why I'm saying that, Mark Andrews has a great matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think a lot of people are going to bet the Baltimore Ravens against the Kansas City Chiefs because the Chiefs' offense might not be revealed to its full potential yet. The Ravens are getting up for this game. I would say the one bet that I like a lot is a Zay Flowers touchdown because I think that there's one person who really wants to redeem himself in that game. It's Zay Flowers because of that fumble. So I will probably bet on a Zay Flowers touchdown week 1 for the Baltimore Ravens. If you want to parlay that with like an Xavier Worthy on the other side, my guy. No, I'm just kidding. But Mark Andrews is still, look, okay? As much as we want to get hyped for Zay Flowers as him ascending and being the quote unquote guy in this offense, I still think the connection with Andrews and Lamar. One thing that we know about Lamar is this: Lamar loves the middle of the field, and he'll either check it down or hit the seams. The seam route is what he loves to do. A lot of quarterbacks that can't really throw outside the hashes, Lamar Jackson, they love the middle of the field. The guys that line up on the outside, this is why I don't like Zay Flowers that much. Long term, if he's going to be used constantly on the outside, it's going to be drag routes, it's going to be quick slants. That's all Lamar can really do, and you better hope that he hits you on a double move. And he's really not developed his game yet. We've seen Lamar Jackson in the NFL. I am still, until he gets hurt yet again, claiming that Mark Andrews is still the number one target guy to earn him this. And Evan Ingram, look, Johnny, I think this matchup is fantastic. I do think that Miami might blow out the Jags. I think a lot of people are, no, the Jags can be competitive. Okay, I mean, it might be what Miami had against the Chargers last year. I think the Jags might become the new Chargers, a hype team that doesn't live up to it, yada, 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 this, that, the other. Johnny, you got some correlation going on the flexes, but if I have to say one thing, it's another clear-cut draw here. Sorry, I just realized. Johnny didn't sweep you. I said there was a draw in the receiver department. Although, David, I understand why you would think you have the slight lean. The matchups are very, very enticing on the Jonathan side. Flexes is where things get interesting because you got Metcalf and you got Higgins. I think this is where it makes me hard to call a winner here. Ridley and Mostert, first and foremost. Okay. Which guy do I like the least out of this bunch? When I look at the name Calvin Ridley, it's easily him. I don't like him. But then I look at DK Metcalf and who he's playing, and that's Patrick Surtain. The best corner in the league just got a contract extension. And the last time that DK Metcalf faced off against Patrick Surtain, he caught the ball 7 times, but was limited for 35 yards. You couldn't beat him over the top. And contested catch, he is not winning that battle against Pat Surtain. We want to see what Ryan Grubb does because the philosophy with Ryan Grubb would suit DK Metcalf's game tremendously. And I think that's why I say this all the time with DK Metcalf. You love him when he is not properly priced, but when he is priced into the 3rd round, fade the fucker. And I think where David took him, was it 4th round or 3rd? Regardless, I think it wasn't that egregious. It's just Metcalf, we know what he is at this point. Like, he's not going back to his his COVID year was his best year, I believe, because I had him in 2021. But the one thing that he does consistently do is score touchdowns, but I don't think it's coming against Denver. And that's because we haven't seen JSN do it, so I would assume whoever is the defensive coordinator on Denver and Sean Payton, they're going to be like, yo, lock this motherfucker up. Let Geno Smith try to beat us with somebody else. That's my thought process. T. Higgins, if there's one guy who is motivated to ball out week 1, it's T. Higgins because he knows he's not getting the bag from Cincinnati. Jamar is. And this matchup should be really good. The only thing that I will throw out there as some bit of a caution and why this is not a green light matchup for me, Christian Gonzalez looked tremendous last year. I think he's a lockdown corner in the making. If Chase was not to suit up, this would be a very interesting battle. Because the thing with T. Higgins is he doesn't separate that well. He's a big, big body on the outside. I think he's a good receiver, but something to keep in mind. Calvin Ridley I like the least, but the matchup for Metcalf makes it seem like it's a draw between those two. And then Raheem Mostert, look, I'm gonna flat out tell you right now, and it's shocking that Nicholas is gonna say this, but Devon A-Chain, okay, being taken in the second round, I understand the hype from it, but from a workload perspective, I still think it's going to be closer to a 50-50. So why not go the aging veteran? I get it. This guy never stays healthy. The 1 year he stayed healthy, he had an insane amount of touchdowns. And you know what? Like Jalen Wright is a perfect backup to fill in for that role. But I love Mostert. If there's one guy I am banking on to do good that week, Mostert, hands down. He's, in my opinion, still the starter, and I think that it's the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Bottom line is, if Mostert and A-Chain only touch the ball 11 times, they can still score. So I feel comfortable with Mostert. Ridley is a projection on volume. I really don't like that matchup at all, though. And then it's T. Higgins. So believe it or not, I think I got to go with Johnny. Cincinnati D, love that call. And Cleveland D is a good defense, but I don't know how I feel about that matchup. Cleveland D, much better at home than on the road if that split continues. Based on the thought process that I have here, the favorite is Johnny, and I could see why. The clear-cut advantage that Johnny has is the running back department. But I do think the X factor for Johnny is Mike Evans and Amari Cooper. Because if those guys can certainly score touchdowns or keep pace with Marvin Harrison Jr. and AJ Brown, then I think the kid's got a great chance to win it there. You then take a look at the tight end matchups. You got an established tight end who, let's be honest, is an elite tight end, but he's knocked off of the tier because Kelsey had a down year and Laporta reset the tight end market because people are like, what the fuck do we do with this guy? Where all the tight ends got pushed down at appropriate ranges. He's a tremendous value pick at where he got him. And Evan Ingram, while he did flirt with a ridiculous amount of catches, there are more mouths to feed now in Jacksonville. Excuse me. So I mean, does the regression happen there, or does this now become Trevor's go-to guy? Like the tight end and the flexes have the biggest question marks, and the ones that I have the least about from a matchup perspective, not long term, Mr. Sutton. I don't have Ridley. I know is going to dud. Okay, now I know I'm going to get the text message when he has a good game from Johnny and rub it in my face. But I love Mostert, and then that correlation with Mostert scoring touchdowns and Jacksonville going back at it, it's almost like a DFS lineup Johnny has, and I love every minute of it. Where Johnny might find himself in trouble, I don't know. Cleveland D giving up a shit ton of points, and then Cincinnati, that might be the X factor for. Honestly, I know we don't want to talk about defense, but if Cleveland does give up a lot of points and Cincinnati forces a lot of turnovers against New England, like that could save David's ass because unless DK Metcalf gets moved all around the field and they say, we're not gonna shadow anybody, it's gonna be tough for Mr. David Sutton. So I am going to go Jonathan.